Alright, welcome back. In this video, we're going to go over ubiquinone and NAD plus / NADH. Very soon, we're going to embark on our fun and painful journey about metabolism. We're going to go over glycolysis, the Krebs cycle, the Cori cycle, and electron transport chain. So don't sweat it. I know this is basically the main part of biochemistry, what people find the most difficult, but I promise I will make it easy for you guys. But before we actually begin, we need to cover some important information first, so when we actually learn about these mechanisms in the future, it will become easier. But first, I have a question for you. What is the goal? Why are we learning this? Why do you go to biochemistry class and learn this? Well, what you're learning is why you need to basically eat food. You're eating food to gain energy. But what you're learning is how we're actually gaining that energy. How are we actually able to fuel our body when you basically consume carbs, protein, and fat? So this is the metabolic pathway we're talking about here. Now, the whole point of this pathway is to, of course, gain energy in the form of ATP. But even more importantly, is you're making water. A lot of people forget about this. They just think, oh yes, we're making ATP, that's the goal, that's the final end goal. No. You are making ATP and water. And the water is essential. But we're going to go more over this when we actually get to the actual pathway. But I want you to know something. What's really, really interesting about biochemistry and actually your human body is all these mechanisms, all these pathways. They're all connected in some way. You probably don't believe me, but let me give you a good example here. Here, this is the formula for aerobic respiration. We're not going to learn about this, but what I'm just showing you as an example. Aerobic respiration goes as follows. We have glucose and we breathe in oxygen. And the products we get is CO2, which we exhale, and ATP, but more importantly, water. What do you mean water? You are actually exhaling water. And this water in this pathway is coming from the metabolism pathway. You probably did not know that, but it is. When you eat something and it actually creates energy, we break it down, we create energy, we also make water. This water is the water we're going to breathe out. And I can prove it to you. If you have some kind of like glass or like a window next to you, exhale on it, breathe out onto it. You'll notice it'll fog up. Well, when it fogs up, what you can actually do is you take your finger and run it through that fogginess, right, on the glass. You'll notice it's a little wet. That's water. That's this. That's basically this, what we're talking about. Another example is when it's cold outside and you breathe out and you're like, oh wow, condensation. You kind of see like steam, but it's not really steam, but it's condensation. That's water. That's the water your body has just produced. I'll give you another example. Have you ever noticed that when you're dehydrated, you still need to pee? You may not drink anything all day, but you still feel like you need to pee just a little bit. Now, the pee is usually like a yellow color. But the reason you're actually able to pee something is because of this. You are generating water. It's a byproduct. So you have to get rid of it. Because your body can only hold on to so much water. But all of this water goes to waste through urine. So that is why sometimes that even if you don't drink any water, you still need to go to the bathroom. This is why. All right, let's begin. So making ATP in water is the end goal, okay? But to actually reach the end goal, it requires some kind of currency. Now this currency comes in the form of electrons and protons. So it's kind of like the money that your body uses to make energy. Because nothing is free in this world. Even when you're in your body, nothing is free. So it requires money in the form of electrons and protons. Where is this coming from? Well, when you're eating food like carbs, fats, and proteins, it is made up of atoms. So what we're doing is we're breaking those down. We're breaking molecules down to harvest the electrons from them and the protons, to charge the system, to basically pay the fine to make energy. That's what's happening. We're eating food just to pay the fine to make the energy. Of course, we're going to actually use the molecules from what we ate, but part of it is we're taking the electrons from the food we've just eaten to pay our way forward to make energy. But it isn't that easy. It never is. Here's the problem. Electrons we harvest from food cannot automatically move to the destination, as well as protons. They cannot move. Electrons and protons just cannot move to anywhere it wants in the body. Currency doesn't have legs. So we need a way to transport these electrons we collect to our final destination, the electron transport chain. So this metabolism pathway that we're going to learn about, glycolysis, Krebs cycle, Cori cycle, electron transport chain, all of this, think, is basically like a train system.
Could you try again?
Sorry, that was Siri. Shut up, Siri. Okay, I apologize. Basically, what we're starting with is when you eat food, that's the first station. Then we go to glycolysis, second station. We go all the way down the station, Cori cycle, Krebs cycle, that's just another station. The last station on the stop, on the train tracks, the last station is the electron transport chain where everything goes off. Everyone goes off the train, the electrons hop off, the protons get off, and we get energy. It's all a train. It is legitimately a train system. So these electrons and protons, they cannot just go, hop station to station. They require a train. And that is where ubiquinone and NAD comes from. So ubiquinone and NAD are basically like an electron bank. They hold on to the electrons as well as protons. They're like the train that takes it to station to station. They basically hold on to the electrons and transport them to the end of the line, which is the electron transport chain. It's the last station. So they can be exchanged for ATP. So this is what I'm calling banks. Ubiquinone, NAD is banks. They're banks for electrons and protons. They're the trains of the system. So let's do the first one. Ubiquinone, also known as Q10. It's found in the mitochondria matrix. It holds 2 electrons and 2 protons. So the molecule of ubiquinone can physically hold on to 2 electrons and 2 protons. So this train, this bank can only hold on to 2 electrons and 2 protons. So here's ubiquinone, abbreviated with Q. So anytime you see Q going forward, that's ubiquinone. Ubiquinone is a ring. 6-carbon ring here. On 2 of those carbons, top and bottom, we have oxygen, a double bonded oxygen. On the left-hand side, we have methoxide groups, 2 methoxide groups. On another carbon, we have a methyl, and in here, the methyl here. Now, here's what we can do. Is this ubiquinone is going to go and find an electron to be picked up from a station, from one of the stages of the cycles, right? It's going to find an electron, and we're going to add it onto the molecule. We have now added the electron right here to this oxygen on the bottom. We're going to call this now semiquinone. It's abbreviated with a Q and a dot and a minus sign. So this dot is showing us it's a radical, or it has an extra electron now. The ubiquinone is now holding an electron. It's actually quite unstable. So what it's going to do is going to pick up a proton. So at one of those stations, we're going to pick up a proton. And the proton joins the oxygen on the top, opposite from where the radical is, where we had just attached the electron. So here was the electron, now we've added the proton on above here to the other oxygen. We abbreviate this with QH dot, or radical. Now this molecule can still hold on to another electron and another proton. So that's exactly what we're going to do. It's going to go to a different station, a different stage of the cycle, and we're going to add a proton and an electron. It's going to go find one. And now, this is called the reduced form. We have now both oxygens are being occupied by protons here, and we call this ubiquinol. Reduced form means that the molecule is holding electrons. And oxidized form means the molecule is not holding any electrons. That's why it's called semiquinone, when it's only holding one of them. So ubiquinol is abbreviated with a QH2 now, because we're holding two hydrogens. We don't draw in the electrons here, we only draw in the hydrogens. And the hydrogens are being now occupied by both oxygens. So that's ubiquinone. And yes, for biochemistry, you must memorize these molecules. Yes, unfortunately you do. Because a lot of the time, professors like to ask, draw the structure of ubiquinone or something like that. So you do have to memorize it. Now let's do NAD, also known as nicotine amide adenine dinucleotide. Ugh, mouthful. Or just NAD, okay? It's located pretty much everywhere. Now, NAD is a little bit different. It holds two electrons in one proton. So unlike ubiquinone, which is two electrons and two protons, this is two electrons and one proton. So the molecule starts as NAD+, okay? This is what it looks like. This part is the NAD part. Well, I should say that. It's basically the nitrogen containing part of NAD, which is the nitrogen right here. And it's basically like a ring, just like ubiquinone, except there's a nitrogen here. On the top is a hydrogen. And bonded to that is a amine group and a double bonded oxygen. So it's an amide, as it's in the name. It's connected or bonded to a ribose and an ADP. So we call this molecule NAD+. The plus, well, it's not really true why the plus is like this, but I like to think about it just so it's easy to remember that nitrogen's holding the plus, so you know it's NAD+. That's not why, but just to make it easy for you guys to remember. So now we're going to add, it's going to go and hunt and find a proton and two electrons. So we're going to reduce the molecule. We don't draw in the electrons, but what we do draw in is the proton here. So now there's going to be two protons there on the top. Notice that the ring had 3 bonds here, now we only have 2. And now there's no plus sign, we've now had 2 electrons on the nitrogen. And we call this NADH. The H coming from the proton we just picked up. There's also NADHP, or rather NADPH, sorry. But we're going to go over that later on when we actually cover the cycles. It's basically the exact same thing except there's a phosphate group on it. But just for this video, just know that there's NAD plus and NADH. And the difference is we just added a hydrogen and the bonds, there's no more, we got rid of a bond here from the ring. So you only have 2 bonds here on the ring here. Only 2 double bonds. So from 3 double bonds here to 2 double bonds here. And the nitrogen has now lost the positive charge on it, and now we have the electrons. And of course we added the hydrogen here. So that is NAD. If you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe. And until next time, later.